Hi guys and welcome back to a new video. So as we are more and more approaching the end of Dragonflight and the launch of the War Within, I think right now is a really good time for you to consider doing a few investments in order to make a lot of gold when the War Within will launch. So here just a quick disclaimer before I start diving into today's video. I'm going to talk a lot about flipping items and making gold while flipping items. And of course, it's always a risk. So keep in mind that sometimes some of these different investments will make you a lot of gold. And also sometimes you might lose some gold. And also it's always different from one item to another and also from one realm to another. So sometimes for one person, a specific investment will work really well, and then for another person, the same investment might not be as profitable. So just something I really want to insist on, because if you are doing some of these different investments and maybe following some of the different advices I will provide you in today's video, just keep in mind that it's not guaranteed that you will actually be able to make a lot of profit. Sometimes it might not work. Before I start diving into the list of all the different items that I would recommend you to invest in, one thing you can use in order for you to track these different items efficiently is this website right here, the Undermine Exchange. So this website will help you to see exactly where you can find some of these really cheap auctions and then purchase them in order to flip them later on. So here, let's say for instance that you are interested in some of the different cosmetics from the Dragonflight expansion. So just go there, look for this specific item that you're interested in. So for instance, let's say this obsidian barrier. And then as you can see, it will tell you on your region that there are 84 available from all the different realms and that the cheapest auction is 5,000 gold. And then you can go down and here you can sort from the lowest price to the highest price, and you will be able to see exactly where these different cheap auctions are located. And so like that, you can then go there, maybe transfer some gold if you have a second account, and then you can purchase these different items and transfer them back on another realm and sell them for a big profit later on in the War Within. So this is really something I would recommend you to use, because like that, you will be able to hunt for some of these good auctions really efficiently. So there are a few items from Dragonflight that I would really recommend you to consider investing in right now, simply because all these different items are currently pretty cheap, and when the War Within will launch, and especially later on during the expansion, these different items are probably gonna gain a lot of value. So the main reason why some of these items will gain a lot of value is simply because right now a lot of people are playing Dragonflight, and so all these different items are things that people are farming a lot or simply getting a lot by doing world activities. And so right now on the auction house, there's a huge amount of these items up on the auction house, and there's not that many people who are buying them. And so right now, these different items are pretty cheap. But of course, when the War Within will launch, not a lot of people will do all these different world activities and things in general in the Dragon House, and so a lot of these different items will become way more rare and therefore way more valuable, because many of them are cosmetic items, transmog items, and things that people will still want even when the War Within will be there. Another reason is simply because some of these items will become way more difficult to farm, and so right now it's pretty easy to get. And when you will be in the War Within, if you want these different items, you will struggle, when again right now it's fairly easy, and so you can definitely find some on the auction house for quite a cheap price, and then you can buy them and resell them later on during the War Within for a lot more gold, without having to try and find them yourself, which again will be a big challenge. So let's start with the first category of items that I would really recommend you investing in, and the ones that here I'm 99% sure you will be able to make a lot of profit with. And these are some of the different raid BoE items, and especially there are 3 BoE items that I want to insist on. So the first one is the Crucible Curator's Wingspan, which is basically part of the priest tier set for the second season of Dragonflight. And this set is absolutely beautiful. And one thing that is interesting to note is the fact that here, if you are playing a cloth class but you're not playing a priest, if you want to learn this appearance, you will have to do it through this item, because otherwise all the other items are priest specific, and so it means you won't be able to learn the appearance on, let's say for instance, your warlock, your mage, or your priest. And so for that reason, these different items are gonna be still relevant in the War Within and still in high demand, simply because again, this set is absolutely beautiful. So now the main thing that I would recommend you to do is really to invest in all these different items in all the different difficulties, because you have LFR, you have normal mode, heroic mode, and mythic mode. And each time, of course, you have a different color for the shoulders. And so what you can do is simply buy a few of them, again, hold on to them until the War Within launches, and of course, until the value starts to increase. And like that, you will be able to probably make a lot of profits. So here I would say a good investment price is probably anything below 60, 70k gold is definitely going to be good. Especially for instance, here you see on this realm, you have some of the different Raid Finder version that are selling for only 47,000 gold. And keep in mind, when the War Within will launch, doing LFR for this type of raids will become very difficult, simply because there's not really going to have the solo queue, and also because you won't be able to find a lot of people to do it with. And so these different items will be even more difficult to obtain. And so probably you will be able to sell them for 300, 400,000 gold pretty easily, when right now you can buy them for only 47,000 gold. And this is the same for all the different difficulties. Of course, the mythic ones are going to be the more challenging ones, because right now they're pretty expensive simply because they're having a really good eye level. But if you can find some for less than, let's say, 200,000 gold, something like that, probably it's a pretty good investment. And here, just to show you a few examples, you can see that, for instance, from Season 2 to Season 3, I decided to make this flip already, and I was able to buy a lot of these different shoulders for maybe 60k on average. And each time I was able to sell them back for 150 to like 400, 500,000 gold each. And I did that on many, many different realms, and I was really able to make probably like at least a gold cap just by buying and reselling these different shoulders on the auction house. So definitely something that, in my opinion, is really interesting at the moment and pretty risk-free, because these different items will always be interesting and relevant in the War Within. Then the two other items that I would recommend you to try and get are this one right here, the Mask of the Unbidden Grim. So this one is basically the mask or the helmet for the Death Knight set for the last season of Dragonflight. And again, this is one that has a really, really good skin and a really nice appearance. And a lot of people will probably still want to use it even when the War Within will be released. And so here for this one, same, I would say anything probably below like 100,000 gold is going to be a good investment. And keep in mind, these again are things that you can only learn through the raid if you're a Death Knight. Otherwise, you will need to learn it through the BoE item in order to get the appearance on, for instance, your Paladin or your Warrior. And then we also have this one right here, the Great Helm of Horn Fury. So this one again is really interesting as well, because this is another very, very good looking helmet. And again, this is something that only Death Knights can get through the raid and not through the BoE. And so here you will be able again to have different type of colors for each of the different difficulties. And all of them are good and things that probably people will be interested in. So for instance here, as you can see, you can have some of them for maybe 100,000 gold. And these are the type of things that me personally, I'm definitely going to invest in, because these different helms are things you can resell later on for 400, 500,000 gold easily. So of course, next to these three main raid BoEs that in my opinion, again, are the most interesting ones and the ones where you're going to take the less risks by investing in them, there are a lot of other good raid BoEs that you can consider also investing in if you find some really, really cheap auctions. So here again, many of them are similar to the three BoEs I already mentioned, in the fact that if you're not playing the specific class this item is from, then you will need to get the BoE in order to get the appearance. So let's say, for instance, this one right here, the Mantle of Sunless Kindling, which is basically the shoulders for the Druid set. If you're not playing on a Druid and you still want this appearance, you will need to learn it through the BoE. So it means that any, for instance, monk, rogue, demon hunter who wants to learn this appearance, they will need to get it through the BoE. The only thing is, of course, some of them are just not as interesting, in my opinion, as the three main ones I mentioned. But again, if you manage to find some for, let's say, for instance, 20,000 gold, 30,000 gold, and you still think they're pretty interesting, especially, for instance, the shoulders, the helmets, and maybe sometimes the legs and chest, then most likely you will still be able to make some gold later on in the War Women. For instance, here, some other interesting examples include the different shoulders for this set right here for the Evoker set, so the Frozen Claw Mantle. These ones are definitely good, and you can find sometimes some for a little bit cheaper price, but as you can see, many times these are pretty expensive. Same, you also have the mage shoulders right here. So again, these ones, in my opinion, are not too bad and things that you will only be able to learn through the raid if you are playing on a mage. Otherwise, it will be through the BoE. So really, it's up to you to see if you can find some of these really cheap auctions and if the item can be interesting or not. But if you really want to take no risk, the main item you should focus on is the Crucible Curator's Wingspan, and then, of course, the two helmets for Death Knights that I already mentioned. So next to all these different raid BoEs, another category of items I would recommend you to try and invest in includes all the different green BoEs from the Dragon Isles, especially the different sets from the Zaralek Cavern. So the reason why these different green BoEs are so interesting is because, as you can see, these are unique appearances. And by unique appearances, I mean that this specific armor with this specific color is only obtainable through these different green BoEs. You won't be able to obtain this specific combination through any other items. And so these different items right now, as you can imagine, are pretty cheap and in high quantity simply because a lot of people are doing all the different daily quests and all these other activities in the Zaralek Cavern. But when the War Within will launch, all these different items will become way more rare on the auction house simply because people won't be doing a lot of things in the Zaralek Cavern anymore, and the interest for these different sets will still be there, and so the value is going to increase a lot. And again, I'm especially mentioning these ones because I think these different sets actually look really good. Especially right here, for instance, you can see the warrior set or the plate set, and I think this is absolutely amazing and something that, trust me, people will still spend quite a lot of gold in order to get later on in the War Within. So of course, next to that, you also have the different armor pieces from the Emerald Dream, and here again, all these different items are also really interesting and they also look good. The only difference is that, as you can see, these are not completely unique because you have other ways to actually get these different items by other means through the Emerald Dream, especially through different vendors and everything. And so these are maybe a little bit easier to get, but still, if you find some of these different items for, let's say, less than 4,000 gold a piece or something like that, definitely maybe consider investing in some of them because they will sell in the War Within for a little bit more gold. These ones are maybe a little more risky compared to the ones from the Zaralek Cavern. And then, of course, you have the different BoE items from the very beginning of the Dragonflight expansion. And these ones are not really as interesting. If you find anything below 500 gold, maybe you can. But these ones, really, I wouldn't recommend you to spend too much gold on them because they're not as interesting. And then you also have, of course, all the different weapons from, for instance, the Zaralek Cavern and also from the Emerald Dream, because some of them have unique appearances, and so some of these different weapons can really be worth a lot of gold in the War Within. So here, as you can see, most of them are sharing the appearances with other items, but still, some of them are really nice. For instance, you have this staff right here, you have some of these other swords and everything, and so I would still recommend you to try and maybe invest in some of them if you can find them for less than 3,000-4,000 gold. And then keep in mind, some of them actually are unique appearances. So for instance, this one right here, as you can see, is a completely unique appearance. Same, for instance, with a few other of these different items. But again, these are maybe a little more risky than the different appearances that, in my opinion, are way more interesting. Now, another category of items I would recommend you to look into includes all the different cosmetic items from the Dragon Isles. So here you will really have a lot of them. And as you can see, you have, for instance, all these different weapons right here. So not all these different weapons are as interesting as others because, for instance, you can see all the ones, for instance, the Wing Crest, the Draconid, and also the tier old ones are pretty cheap. And so many times you will be able to find them for less than 100 gold or less than 200 gold. And then you have some others that are a little bit more expensive. And these ones will usually be at more than 10 to 15,000 gold on most realms. So what I would recommend you to do is to still consider investing in all these different items because even the very cheap ones will still be more rare on the auction house when the War Within will be launched. And so you will probably be able to make a little bit of profit with them. And so for any of these different items, I would say anything below 200, 300 gold is probably a good investment. And then you of course have a few of the tier old items that you can maybe consider investing a bit more. So for instance, for the broadsword, this one, I would say maybe anything below 1,000, 2,000 gold is probably a good auction as well. And then for all the other ones, maybe consider investing if you find some of them for less than 5,000 gold. More than that is already taking a little bit of a risk, and more than 10,000 gold is, in my opinion, definitely a little bit too risky. But it depends again on which items you're focusing on because some of them, as you can see, have average value and sell rate on the overall region for more than 20,000 gold. And so it means that on average, you will be able to only find these weapons for 20,000 gold. So what I would recommend you to do again is really make sure to use the Undermine Exchange website. Try to track all these different items and see if you can find some cheap auctions across all the different realms in your region. Next to these different weapons, of course, you also have different armor pieces that are also cosmetic items and that you can also get from the Dragon Isles. So here, for instance, as you can see, you have all these different ones right here. Let me just find them. So you have all the different Nokudan set, the Obsidian set, Citadel Crusher, and you have a few more. So basically, as you can see, these sets are specific to some of the different zones. So from the Onaran Plains, you can get the full Nokudan set, which basically looks like that, which I think is pretty nice. Then you also have, for instance, from Taldrazus, the entire tier old armor pieces. So here, this is again a pretty nice set, and this is a cloth set. And then you have like a few more of them. So again, if you can, try to maybe invest in some of these different cosmetic items because they are unique. One important thing to note for these different items is the fact that they're not part of the cosmetic section, but they're part of the normal armor section. So what you can do is just click on eye level to sort from eye level level 1 to the maximum, and like that you will be able to find all these different cosmetic items right here. Now, next to all these different cosmetic and transmog items, there are a few more category of items you can consider investing in, but these are a little bit more risky and not as interesting. Still, I think it's important to mention them. So first, you have, for instance, the different toys that you can get from different rares and everything from the Dragonflight expansion. So here you have, for instance, the Dean's Drum. You also have, for instance, the Lava Molten Bowl. So these different toys are things that you can get by killing rares, and probably they will have a little bit less of them up on the auction house when the new expansion will launch, but I don't think the value is going to change drastically. And also, I think these are still pretty easy to get because they're from singular rares, and so people will still probably farm them in order to get them and sell them on the auction house. So if you find some that are really cheap, maybe consider investing in them. But otherwise, I would say these might be a little bit more tricky. Same, for instance, with some of the different battle pets from the different rares and from other sources from the Dragon Isles. So here again, I would say some of them might be interesting, but you might want to only consider investing if you find some really cheap auctions. For instance, you have Brawl right here that can be maybe interesting. Then you have, for instance, Wakin as well. So this is really up to you to see if you want to invest in some of them. And keep in mind here, I'm only talking about all the different pets and toys that you can get from these different rares, not the ones that you can craft, because any crafted items will probably remain the same And so please do not invest in all these different crafted items. And the last category of items that I want to mention includes all the different illusions that you can get, or at least all the different formula illusions you can get, because these will still be relevant in the War Within. People will still probably try to get their hands on these different formula in order to craft these different illusions and then to sell the different illusions on the auction house. So these different formula, especially the blue ones, might be a good investment opportunity. Again, these are a little bit more risky than the transmog and cosmetic items, but trust me, you will always be able to sell them back for a pretty good price, even if the value doesn't increase a lot. So here, anything below 5,000 gold for these different blue ones, I would say is a pretty good deal. And then for the epic one, anything maybe below 150 to 200,000 gold might be worth considering. Now, the last thing that I want to mention is actually not about investing, but more about selling. And these are all the different items that I really think you should try and sell as soon as possible, because otherwise you're gonna end up losing a lot of gold by not selling them right now. So for instance, you have all the different raid BoEs other than the ones that can be sold because of their appearance. So for instance, all the different wrists, all the different rings, and all these different items. Soon they will be completely irrelevant simply because the War Within will launch, and so no one is going to spend a lot of gold on these different BoEs. So try to sell them even if it's for a little bit of a cheaper price compared to the average regional value, because like that you will still make sure to make some gold with them instead of just keeping them at a very high price and maybe end up not selling them before the release of the War Within, and then you will probably have to vendor them later on or use them on one of your arts. Same, for instance, with some of the very rare recipes. I'm especially thinking of the Elemental Laria. If you're someone who still has some of them up on the auction house and is still trying to sell them for 1.5 million gold or something like that, please do not. Because maybe if you're extremely lucky, someone will invest that amount of gold in order to buy the design, but most likely no one is going to actually buy the design at this point in the game, because again, the expansion is ending in less than 2 months, and so probably a lot of people won't even consider spending this amount of gold on things that are only relevant in the Dragonflight expansion. So if you have some of these designs, try to sell them for a cheaper price. I'm not talking about like 100,000 gold or something like that, but try to sell them for maybe less than 1 million gold, maybe less than like half of the regional value. So like that, again, you will make sure to still get a sale before the release of the War Within. So that's pretty much it for today's video. Of course, keep in mind, these are only recommendations, and if you're not feeling very sure about some of the different investments, or you don't have a lot of gold and you're risking to really just waste a lot of your gold, maybe consider doing something else, because again, investing in this type of items and flipping items in the game in general is always risky. And so as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you always take the risk of actually losing some gold, and of course you want to try and minimize that risk as much as possible. So I would really recommend you to only invest when you're feeling confident about the market, about the specific items you're investing in. And hopefully this type of videos can help you become a little more confident and understand a little better the market and how to see if one item is a good offer or a bad offer. But again, this is really up to you, and I really hope that this video will help you to maybe make a few of these different investments and to hopefully make a lot of profit when the War Within will launch. So with that being said, I will be back very soon with more guides and more videos, and in the meantime, I wish you all a great day. Bye!